What happens when the man who built the company walks into one of his own stores and sees something that changes everything? Preston Miller sat in his truck outside store 13, tapping his fingers against the steering wheel. The afternoon sun glared through the windshield and he adjusted his cap, tugging it lower. The name tag on his navy polo shirt read Terry. His beard was grown out, his usually neat hair now messy, and his glasses were thicker than necessary. A perfect disguise. No one at this location had ever met him, and with 18 stores across the state, it wasn't surprising. He built the company from nothing 15 years ago, starting with a single storefront and sleeping in the backroom. Now, it had grown big, too big, maybe. Lately, customer complaints had gone up. Not a lot, but enough to make him uneasy. More than that, he'd been hearing whispers about employee morale being low at specific locations. Store 13 came up twice, but Preston didn't want reports. He wanted truth. He was supposed to start that morning as a new warehouse trainee, but a flat tire on the side of I-74 delayed him by 3 hours. He texted the district office to let them know he'd still be showing up late and headed in. He walked through the back entrance of the store, stepping into the break room. It was quiet. He heard voices through the warehouse wall. He followed them, keeping his head down as he entered. A man in his 40s stood near the loading dock, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "You're not getting another hour off next week. I don't care what's going on at home." Preston stopped. A younger worker, early 20s, maybe stood in front of him, red-faced, his arms shaking slightly. "I'm just asking for one day. My mom's surgery got moved." "I'll work a double the day after, I swear. I'm not running a charity, Jacob," the man snapped. "You want time off? Go work somewhere else. I need people who are reliable, not ones who run home crying every time mommy coughs." The kid's mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked down at the floor. Preston felt his stomach tighten. He walked up casually, adjusting the clipboard under his arm. "Excuse me," he said in a flat voice. "Where do new hires check in?" The assistant manager turned, annoyed. "You must be the late guy." "Figures?" He looked Preston up and down. "Name? Terry, right? I'm Brad. I run the back here," he said, already walking. "Follow me. Let's go." Preston glanced at Jacob, who gave him a weak nod and walked off toward the shelves. Brad led him through the warehouse, explaining things too fast, tossing around terms without context. "Don't move anything without a scan. Don't mess with the dock. Don't ask me stupid questions." Preston asked, "How long have you been here?" "Too long," Brad muttered. "I've kept this place running while the company keeps hiring soft kids who want therapy time instead of work." Preston didn't respond, just nodded. The rest of the afternoon dragged. Brad barked orders, disappeared for long stretches, and left Preston to figure things out on his own. One older worker named Lewis quietly helped him figure out the scanner system. "Don't mind Brad," he said. "He's always like this. Most of us just ignore it." "How come no one says anything?" Preston asked. Lewis shrugged. "They tried. One girl called the district office last year. She didn't last a week after that." Preston kept his expression neutral but made a mental note. As the shift ended, he found Jacob again in the break room, sitting alone, staring at a half-eaten sandwich. "You all right?" Preston asked, sitting across from him. "I'm fine," Jacob replied, not looking up. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to, just, I heard what happened." Jacob exhaled slowly. "My mom's got cancer. We just found out last month. I've been picking up extra shifts to help with her medical bills." His voice cracked. "I just needed 3 hours next Thursday to take her to her appointment. That's it." Preston was quiet. "You've been here long?" 6 months. "I like the job. I like the team, just not him." Preston nodded again. "Thanks for telling me." He walked out of the break room and leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets, heart pounding. He'd always believed in hard work, discipline, and accountability. But this wasn't leadership. This was cruelty, and it had been going on under his nose. He looked around at the people on the floor, Lewis laughing with another worker, Jacob wiping his face quietly, 2 younger women carrying boxes together. Preston wasn't sure what hurt more, seeing it happen or knowing he'd let it. Tomorrow he'd come back. He'd stay quiet a little longer. He needed to be sure. But Brad had just made one mistake too many. And Preston Miller never forgot. Preston arrived the next morning before sunrise. The air smelled like damp asphalt as he stood behind the building, waiting for the first shift to arrive. A warehouse worker named April opened the side door with a key card and gave him a quick nod. She had thick glasses and wore a paint-stained hoodie under her uniform. She didn't ask questions, just held the door open and walked ahead with the quiet rhythm of someone who'd done it 100 times already. Inside, the lights flickered to life one row at a time. The warehouse looked colder in the morning, the concrete floor still holding the chill from overnight. Preston found a time clock near the lockers and punched in. No sign of Brad yet. He followed April to the back where pallets sat untouched, most still wrapped in plastic. A clipboard rested on a stack, covered in half-checked inventory sheets. April opened a box cutter with one hand and started slicing plastic wrap off a shipment of space heaters. "You always start this early?" Preston asked, keeping his tone casual. "Only when no one else will," she said, not looking up. "We're short 3 for morning crew." "Has been like that for 2 weeks. Management know. They know everything. They just don't care until shelves are empty. Even then, they'll blame us." She moved with practiced speed, but there was a stiffness to her right shoulder. Preston watched as she angled her body carefully, shifting weight to avoid strain. "You all right?" "I tore a tendon last year loading a fridge. No compensation. They said I didn't report it fast enough. Been paying for physical therapy out of pocket." Preston didn't respond. She didn't expect him to. By 7:30, the warehouse buzzed with activity. Trucks backed into the loading dock, forklifts beeped, and the overhead speakers crackled with the usual half-broken intercom announcements. Brad arrived 15 minutes late, sunglasses on, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. He brushed past Preston without a word. "Where's Jacob?" He barked to no one in particular, still on his approved schedule, April answered. "Mid-shift today." Brad ignored her. He tossed his coffee onto a desk near the dock office, pulled out his phone again and leaned against the wall. For the next hour, he didn't move. Preston ran pallets with April and a younger guy named Devont who wore earbuds but kept one out to hear instructions. Devont was fast, efficient. But when Preston asked about break schedules, he just shook his head. "Brad doesn't do breaks. If you need 5 minutes, you take it and hope he doesn't catch you. What if someone gets dizzy or lightheaded? Then you better hope you don't fall near his office." At noon, the break room was packed. People sat in shifts, 20-minute windows. Preston found an empty stool near the vending machines. April sat across from him with a plastic container of leftover pasta. Devont joined them, wiping sweat from his neck. "You knew?" he asked. "Yeah, you'll figure it out. Just keep your head low and don't ask Brad anything unless you want a lecture." April looked up from her food. "Where'd you come from?" "Louisville," Preston said. "Was working in shipping before this." "You transfer in?" "No, just needed a job." "Heard this place was hiring fast." April narrowed her eyes slightly, then nodded. "Makes sense. They can't keep people." The door swung open. Brad walked in, looked around, then pointed at a woman near the back, Janelle. "You were on the floor for 35 minutes before your scanner even registered a pull. What were you doing?" Everyone went silent. Janelle stood slowly. She looked exhausted. "I was helping unload a damaged shipment." The barcode was torn off half the boxes. "You're not a supervisor," Brad said. "You don't make decisions. You're told what to do, you clock in and you scan. If I see another delay on your log, you're done." Janelle didn't argue. She sat down again. Her jaw clenched, but she kept her head still. Preston watched the tension in the room mount. No one looked up. No one said a word. That afternoon, a forklift jammed near the dock. Devont was driving. He jumped out, frustrated, trying to fix the angle of the load. The back wheels had caught on a crack in the concrete. Brad finally moved from his spot in the office and walked outside. "You break something?" "No, just stuck," Devont said. "I'll get it. You better. You know what those tires cost. If I see another screw up on your name, you won't be driving anything. It's a maintenance issue, Devont said. The floor's been cracking since last month. Lewis already reported it twice. Brad turned to Preston. You see what I deal with? Bunch of kids playing victim every time something doesn't work right. Then he walked off, leaving the jammed forklift where it was. When Devont finally freed the wheels with help from April, he kicked a loose piece of concrete to the side and muttered, "This place eats people." By the end of the shift, Preston's back ached. He tucked his scanner into the charging dock and followed the others toward the locker area. He found Lewis leaning against a metal bench, rubbing his wrists. "You all right?" Preston asked. "Just sore. Happens when your gloves tear and no one orders new ones." "They out of stock?" "No, just locked up in the manager's cabinet." "Brad doesn't hand out gear unless he has to." Preston stared at the locker. "What's the process for getting replacements?" Lewis laughed once. "You ask, he says no, that's the process." "Has anyone talked to HR?" Lewis shook his head. "The last guy who filed a complaint got transferred out. Didn't even get notice. One day he clocked out, next day his name was off the schedule." Preston nodded slowly. "Thanks." He stepped into the restroom, locked the stall, and sat down on the toilet lid. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. He stared at the back of the door, his fists clenched. He'd seen enough. This wasn't about one bad attitude. It was a pattern. Intimidation, neglect, retaliation, people working injured, people begging for gear, people afraid to breathe wrong near a manager who did nothing but threaten and sit. He had built this company on the idea that if you took care of your team, they'd take care of the customers. Somewhere along the way, that vision had been buried under layers of middle management and unchecked power. Tomorrow, he wasn't coming in as Terry. Tomorrow, he was coming in as Preston Miller, and Brad would answer for everything. Preston pulled into the lot just after noon. It was a Saturday, and Store 13 was already running behind. The front lot was full, trucks were backed up at the dock, and a line of customers wrapped past the entrance. This time, he wasn't wearing the uniform. A black collared shirt, pressed slacks, and clean boots. No name tag, no disguise. As he walked through the front doors, the floor manager at the register glanced up, did a double take, and looked down quickly. Preston didn't stop. He cut through the store and headed for the warehouse. He passed customers waiting for pickups and employees scrambling to find carts. A woman near the service counter was wiping her face with a napkin and trying to calm a toddler. No one offered to help her. He pushed open the double doors leading to the back. A forklift beeped in the distance, but the loading dock was stalled. One truck sat halfway unloaded, the rest untouched. Inside, a half-dozen employees worked in silence, fewer than there should have been for a weekend like this. April was dragging a dolly stacked with portable AC units. Her shoulder was taped now. Preston noticed how she leaned slightly to one side, adjusting after every few steps. He stepped toward the warehouse office. Brad was inside, sitting with his feet on the desk, watching a video on his phone. He didn't look up until Preston reached the door. "You lost?" Brad asked, not recognizing him. Preston opened the door and walked in without a word. "Hey, this area is for supervisors only." Preston shut the door behind him and sat down across the desk. Brad narrowed his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" "My name is Preston Miller," he said, calm but direct. "I own this company." Brad stared at him, blinking once, then twice. "Wait, what?" "I've been undercover at this location for the past 2 days. I've seen how you run this floor, I've spoken to your team, I've seen how you treat them." Brad scoffed, recovering slightly. "All right, listen. I don't know what you think you've seen, but this warehouse runs better than most. You want production numbers. Ask corporate." "I don't care about numbers right now," Preston said. "I care about the fact that you've created an environment where employees are afraid to speak. Where basic safety gear is withheld. Where personal emergencies are mocked. And where you sit in this office while people with injuries handle freight alone." Brad opened his mouth, but Preston cut him off. "You denied a medical time-off request from an employee whose mother is undergoing surgery. You mocked another employee for reporting a maintenance hazard. You've withheld gloves, ignored injury reports, and threatened retaliation for complaints. I don't you do. I've seen it. I've lived it. I worked beside them. Brad's hands twitched on the desk. Look, maybe I've been a little harsh, but this is a warehouse. We don't have time for feelings. If people can't handle the pressure, they don't belong here. Preston stood. You're done. Effective immediately. Brad's jaw dropped. You're firing me. You're being terminated for violating company policy on employee treatment, safety violations, and retaliatory behavior. I've already contacted HR. You'll be escorted out within the hour. You are not to speak to any staff on your way out. Brad stood, voice rising. This is ridiculous. You can't just walk in here and Preston's tone didn't change. You've abused your position. You've created a hostile work environment. There is no place for that in this company. You're finished. For a moment, Brad just stood there, breathing hard, like he didn't know whether to shout or sit back down. Then he grabbed his phone, muttered something under his breath, and stormed past Preston, slamming the door open. Preston waited 5 seconds, then stepped out onto the floor. The warehouse had gone quiet. The noise from the front barely reached them. April had stopped mid-load. Devont stood with a clipboard in hand, frozen. Preston raised his voice just enough to carry. I'm Preston Miller. I started this company 15 years ago. I've been working here the last 2 days under another name to see what was really happening. No one moved. I've seen the way you've been treated. I've seen the pressure you're under. And I've seen how hard most of you work without the support you deserve. What I saw was unacceptable. That changes today. People exchanged looks. No one spoke. Brad is no longer with the company. He will not be returning. HR has already been informed. If any of you have pending complaints that were ignored or suppressed, they will be investigated. You will not be punished for speaking up. You have my word. He paused, scanning the faces. Lewis stepped forward. Are you serious? He asked, voice low. Yes. April set the dolly down. What happens now? First, we stabilize the floor. I've got a regional supervisor arriving in 20 minutes to take over operations for the short term. Second, we're bringing in 2 floaters from Store 6 to help with the load today. And third, we're having a full safety audit by Monday. No more locked gear, no more ignored injuries. Devont raised a hand halfway. And scheduling. We're hiring 3 new warehouse associates starting next week. You'll have your full crew back within 10 days. Until then, you'll be paid overtime for any extra shifts you choose to take, but no one will be forced to pick up extra hours. A few heads nodded. Preston continued. I need your help to turn this around, but I'm not asking for blind loyalty. I'm asking for honesty. If something's broken, you tell us. If you're being treated unfairly, you speak up. And if anyone tries to retaliate against you for doing the right thing, you come straight to me. Janelle stepped forward from the back. What about Jacob? He's being moved to flexible scheduling with full pay for the next 2 weeks. He'll be able to take his mother to her appointments without losing hours. A wave of quiet relief passed through the group. Preston could feel the tension shift, not gone, but loosened. He turned to April. You're off for the rest of the day, full pay. A medical specialist will be here Monday to evaluate your shoulder. If you need treatment, we'll cover it. She looked stunned but nodded once. Preston moved toward the office. I'll be here the rest of the day. Questions, concerns, anything you need, come find me. I'm not leaving until this store is stable. As he stepped inside, he caught Devont's voice behind him. He really meant it. Preston sat down at the desk Brad had once used like a throne and opened his laptop. He pulled up the full employee roster. Notes from the last 2 days ran through his head like a reel. He began typing not just reports, but names. Good workers. People who deserved recognition. People who had held the place together despite everything. Outside the office, the warehouse slowly came back to life. It wasn't fixed, not yet. But it was moving. And for the first time in a long time, Preston felt like he was exactly where he needed to be by Monday morning. The tone inside Store 13 had shifted, but the tension hadn't disappeared. The warehouse was still understaffed. April's absence left the crew short-handed, and Jacob was on his adjusted schedule. Preston had made it clear that no one would be overworked without consent, but the reality was sharp. There were fewer hands than boxes, and the trucks didn't care who had been fired or who was recovering. They just kept arriving. Preston hadn't left the building all weekend. He'd worked beside the team, logged inventory, and kept his laptop open at all times. The interim supervisor, a woman named Darlene from Store 6, had arrived Sunday afternoon. She didn't try to win anyone over with speeches. She just rolled up her sleeves and asked where she was needed. People noticed. Lewis had started speaking more. He didn't say much, but he no longer looked at the floor when he walked past the office. Devont, though still cautious, had taken the lead on light equipment checks, and Janelle had started training one of the new hires who'd shown up that morning. Her tone was flat but steady. Preston stood by the loading dock now, clipboard in hand, watching as a refrigerator slid too far on the pallet jack. The new guy Marcus caught it just in time with his hip, wincing slightly. Preston stepped in, grabbing the edge of the unit and helping guide it onto the lift. "You all right?" he asked. "Yeah, just heavier than I thought." "Next time, call for help. That model's not meant to be moved solo." Marcus nodded once and wheeled the jack away. Janelle gave a half nod as she passed, not warm but not cold either, just watchful. Preston turned toward the break room. Inside, Darlene was reviewing the roster against the updated scheduling board. She didn't look up. "We're still too short for Thursday," she said. "I've got one transfer approved from Store 11, but the other's stuck in onboarding." "How long?" "HR says 6 days if nothing stalls." Preston glanced at the board. "Can we rotate light duty between morning and night shifts to spread the load? Maybe. But it'll slow processing time." "I'd rather lose speed than burn out another crew member," Darlene nodded. "Copy that." A knock on the door interrupted them. Jacob stood just outside holding a folder. Preston waved him in. "I didn't want to just leave this on the desk," he said. "It's my time off form, signed by the clinic and everything." Preston took it. "You don't need to bring this in person. I know, I just wanted to say, thanks for backing me up." "You didn't need backing, you needed someone to listen." Jacob hesitated. "I told my mom what happened. She thought I was lying, said no boss ever does that." Preston gave a slight smile. "Tell her she's right, most don't, but we're changing that." Jacob nodded and stepped out. Darlene tapped the folder Preston had placed on the desk. "You're not just fixing one store." "You know that, right?" "I know." "Then we better talk systems, not just people, because this doesn't happen in a vacuum." They spent the next 2 hours reviewing management reports across all locations. Patterns emerged. Stores with high turnover had one thing in common: unchecked autonomy among floor supervisors. Most of the complaints didn't reach HR. They stopped at the district level, where numbers protected behavior. If a manager hit their quota, no one asked how. Preston shut the file and stood. "I need to meet with the district leads, all of them. End of week. Want me to set it up?" "Yes. But before that, I've got one more stop to make." He left the office, walking toward the front of the store. At the customer service desk, the same woman from Saturday, the one with the toddler, was back. This time she was speaking with a younger employee who looked overwhelmed. Preston stepped up beside them. "Ma'am, is everything okay?" She turned, clearly surprised. "Oh, yes. I was just trying to pick up my order. It's supposed to be prepaid, but it's not showing up in the system." "What name is it under?" She handed him her phone. Preston scanned the order number and typed it into the internal terminal behind the desk. Found it. "Looks like it was scanned in under the wrong SKU. That's why it's not showing in your profile." He turned to the employee behind the counter. "No one's at fault here. Let's just mark it corrected and have it pulled for her now. Put a note in the log so it doesn't happen again." The employee nodded and disappeared into the warehouse. The woman looked at him, puzzled. "Are you a manager?" "I'm the owner," she blinked. "Oh, well, thank you." Preston didn't say anything else. Just waited until the employee returned with the item and then stepped aside. As he walked back through the store, he noticed the small things shelves half-stocked, a missing safety cone near the mop bucket, an unplugged scanner at the end cap. Details that would have meant nothing to him a week ago. Now they meant everything. By Wednesday, the new transfer from Store 11 had arrived. Her name was Casey. She didn't speak much, but she moved fast and handled stock like she'd been doing it for years. April returned with limited duty clearance. Her shoulder was still stiff, but she was cleared for coordination and light prep. Preston reassigned her to receiving checks and inventory spot audits roles that didn't require lifting but gave her authority over pace. She didn't thank him. She just did the job. That was enough. Late that afternoon, Preston gathered the warehouse team in the break room. No chairs, no podium, just a quiet circle near the lockers. "I wanted to say this in person," he began. "What happened here wasn't just a failure of one manager. It was a failure in how we let systems run without oversight." "That stops now." No one interrupted. "Effective next month, every store will undergo quarterly culture audits. Not just safety, not just numbers. We'll be checking leadership behavior, employee satisfaction, and retention patterns. These audits will be anonymous and direct to my office." A few eyebrows raised. "I'm also implementing a rotating field supervisor program. That means no single person runs unchecked for too long. If someone's abusing power, we'll know. If someone's doing great work and not being seen, we'll know that too." Preston looked around the room. "You've all carried more than you should have had to. That changes. I can't promise everything will be perfect, but I can promise it won't go back to what it was." Lewis spoke up. "And if it tries to," Preston nodded, "then you call me. Direct line. No middle steps." Devont folded his arms. "You really mean all this?" "I do, and I'm holding myself to it first." The room was quiet for a moment longer. Then Janelle said, "I'll believe it when I see it." "Fair," Preston replied. "You should." He stepped away, letting the group return to their shifts. As he walked through the warehouse, he didn't feel triumphant. He felt responsible. That was the point. By the end of the week, productivity was still behind. The numbers weren't back to target, but the team was upright. No one was hiding injuries. No one was walking on eggshells. Orders were moving slowly but steadily. People spoke without flinching. And no one was afraid to take a breath between tasks. Preston stood at the edge of the dock that Friday evening, watching the last truck pull out. Darlene joined him. "You're not going to be able to do this for every store," she said. "No, but I can make sure someone does." She tilted her head. "You think they'll keep trusting you?" "I don't need blind trust. I need earned trust, and that starts with showing up." She nodded once and walked off. Preston looked out across the parking lot, now nearly empty. The lights buzzed to life overhead, casting long shadows across the pavement. He didn't plan to go undercover again. He didn't need to. The lessons from Store 13 were enough. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost sight of the ground level. He'd let numbers speak louder than people. But now he'd heard them. He wouldn't stop listening.